Well done. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to announce, indeed confirm, that John Olsen AO will be the Adelaide Football Club's 5th chairman. John's reputation and profile is well known, I'm sure. A former Premier of South Australia, a 10-year stint as chairman of the SANFL and more recently with the Stadium Management Authority. A very good person. We've undergone a very lengthy process, it seems, but a thorough one. And I was delighted that John accepted our invitation to take on this role. I might pause there, hand over to John to say a couple of words, and then we're open for questions.
Well, firstly, Rob, might I at the outset say to you, for your 14 years service to the Adelaide Football Club and 12 years as chair of the Adelaide Football Club, thank you. The leadership that you've given this club over that extended period of time, your passion and time commitment to the club has been exceptional.
Appreciate that.
I was flattered, stunned and delighted to be invited to join the Adelaide Football Club board as its chair going forward. And it reminds me of my early days as a supporter of the Adelaide Crows. I was at the 97 and 98 premiership wins. I saw the jubilation that enveloped South Australia as a result of that win. I remember Kerry Stokes saying to me at that grand final in Melbourne, "You won't understand what this win does for South Australia." And that crowd that turned out in King William Street in front of the Town Hall at the reception that I had the privilege of hosting with the then Lord Mayor really demonstrated how this football club and its association with South Australia is really important. And of course, who could forget 53,000 at Adelaide Oval for the women's grand final win to top it off. So my passion towards this club has extended since its formation, and recognising the formation of the Adelaide Football Club came from this 8 SANFL clubs. And following that time, it's built into a powerhouse and premierships and the like. It has a really good future, and over the recent weeks I've had the opportunity to have a discussion with the board, the coaches, the players and some in the administration. And I'm really heartened by where the club is at the moment and the direction the club has laid out for the future. It's positive.
Thank you, John.
Can we ask, how many hours a week does the role of chair require to do it properly?
Yeah, I get asked that one often. It varies. Some weeks, seriously, it is a couple of hours. It's a phone call to the coach, to the CEO, taking a media inquiry. Other days, or other weeks, when issues arise, it's drop everything. And, you are required to be available to the club and to its members and to my fellow board and to the CEO. But so it varies, Mike, hence why when we were looking for a chairman, it was somebody that did have the ability to give of his or her time and when the need arose, to drop things and be able to, spend that necessary time at the football club. And John has got that.
Well, on that basis, John, Rob's just said it requires sometimes to drop everything and be in the club. What happens if you've got Scott Morrison breathing down your neck from a Liberal Party point of view nationally? What's the priority here, the Crows or the Liberal Party?
Over the last 10 years, I've been chair of not only SANFL, but chair of the Adelaide Oval. And I've also been involved with the party at a local level. And I've managed over the last decade competing interests to ensure that time is available to meet the needs of the organisation. I've also given a lot of thought to my position on the Adelaide Oval board. I've been on the board for 10 years, the former chair of the board, currently deputy chair of the board, and I'd propose to step down from the Adelaide Oval board over the next few months or before the AGM, so that there could not be seen any conflict or perceived conflict of interest.
But that still doesn't quite answer the question. Is there a priority here with your roles, and I know, okay, the Crows are a bit different from the SANFL, and especially where they are in their time in their history, what takes priority?
Well, let me just go back to SANFL at the moment. SANFL's gone through also a challenging time over the last decade, and very significant decisions have had to be made. The shift to Adelaide Oval was no small feat. Negotiating with the two AFL clubs their licence return, negotiating with the build of Adelaide Oval in terms of architectural drawings and the like. So you should not dismiss the workload that was involved in the past. Where there are issues to manage, you respond to the issues that are required. I've done that throughout my life as Premier, and I continue to do so. It's simply a management thing, and focusing on the priority of the issue that's on the table at the time.
So you're looking forward to the juggle between the two?
Well, I guess if I look back on my life for the last 20 or 30 years, that's exactly what I've been doing. There are competing interests from time to time, but you rank them in priority and you deal with them, and then you move on.
John, with the greatest respect, you're not getting any younger, none of us are. You're 20 years older than Rob. What are you going to bring to this role, and what's the longevity of this? Or is it just an interim measure until they find someone perhaps a little more youthful, perhaps with more progressive ideas? I say that with respect, by the way, as I always would.
Yes, and you say it with a grin. In relation to the appointment, it's a 3-year appointment, which is a standard appointment for a board member of the Adelaide Football Club. I've been asked to take this role on for 3 years, and I'm delighted to do so.
You see it going longer than that? You see it like a 10-year role? Well, you see it into your 80s?
Okay, well, I still barefoot water ski, Mike, so a level of fitness is still I'm fortunate to at least have a level of fitness.
Was it a tough decision to take on the role?
I thought about the invitation for some time. As I said at the start, I was flattered and stunned. It was something that I really wanted to do. And I wanted to do it simply because I've been a fan of this club throughout its history. I've been supportive of this club throughout its history. I want to be part of this club as it moves into its next phase. And there are many new opportunities emerging. For example, facilities closer to the city for the fan base and the club in the future. There are a number of items on the agenda that will require real focus and some determination, and I hope to bring that to the role.
Can I say that with John too? You know, I reckon if I'd offered the job to a few people, they'd just go yes. And John took probably a couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. And I think that depicts his professionalism. He did his due diligence. He spent hours with myself, with Andrew, other board members, and took his time to go through that process to reach the decision, which every day that's gone by to getting to this point, you know, I become increasingly confident that, you know, I just know John is the person to lead us into the future.
Was that time frame weeks, days, months?
The time frame I was just referring to was a couple of weeks, but we have been speaking to John for more than a couple of months.
Is that move to North Adelaide at the top of your agenda, of items you want to achieve?
Well, certainly what is a priority is looking for a facility for the Adelaide Football Club close to the city. And there are options that have been canvassed in the past. Of course, COVID has impacted on all of us in different ways, and it's no different from the Adelaide Football Club. I see that with SANFL clubs, I've seen it with the Adelaide Oval board and looking after the interests of the Oval, how revenue streams have taken a very substantial hit. So COVID has intervened in the quest for the new home base for the Adelaide Football Club, but it is clearly a priority for the fans of this club, and therefore it'll be a focus going forward.
Do you think you were brought on because of your extensive contacts and network to be able to make that move happen?
Well, didn't hurt, but he was brought on for all of the right reasons. He's got all the right skill set, certainly the experience garnered through his life just bodes well for what's going to be on our agenda, and it just fitted the bill. So, you know, the contacts you get over a number of years in the roles that John has held will assist, of course. John's got a good board, good management team here to assist with the priorities, but, you know, clearly winning games of football, indeed finals football, and a new home base for our members, John understands, and we all understand are our priorities.
John, where do you see, you having dealt with you for now decades, and you demand excellence, where do you see the Crows having to finish next season for it to be a successful season? That's number one. And do you give the coach and the CEO your full support? Are they doing a great job? Because let's face it, couldn't have finished much worse this year.
No, this year, and I think those that I've spoken to would say this year was not a satisfactory year. It was a fail for the club. But the club has, in my discussions and observations over the last few weeks and months, have really put in place a ruthless reassessment of the club and have made really substantive decisions, some announced, some yet to be announced, which I think augur well, and to my comment earlier, a positive direction for this football club going forward. I'm really confident of that, and I see the enthusiasm in the people I've spoken to in relation to the path the football club is taking, and I really commend the decision-making that's been undertaken over the course of this last year to position the club where it is today and to lay out a plan for the future development of the club. In relation to your point about success, success on the field, premierships is what the football club's about. Its core function is footy, winning games and winning premierships. That's the focus. If you want to ask me to benchmark where we should be next year, we will lift. There is no doubt about that. This club will lift substantially next year. I have no doubt about that.
Into the eight.
But of course that'd be an objective. But I've also learnt, Mike, over those 20 or 30 years that you and I have been dueling in press conferences, in a political sense, you should never make a benchmark because you'll always be held to that benchmark come hell or high water. Aspiration is what is important here, and the aspirations I have and the aspirations that the people I've talked to in this club is to be successful, is to win games and to be premiership contender. That's the objective.
What's your view of the recent drug scandal here?
Unacceptable, disappointing, and not the culture that I see the Adelaide Football Club wants to instil in its young people.
Do you want those two players here next season?
I beg your pardon?
Do you want the two players involved here?
Well, in that context, discussions have taken place, are also continuing, and I haven't been part of those discussions, obviously, because I don't take this role on until the end of October, and it would be presumptuous of me to intervene in the discussions that are taking place with those two players at the moment. But I go back to my point, if you're going to press the point, I go back and say the disappointment of those two players against the education they receive at this club is really disappointing, and it is not reflective of what the standards of this club are, or of what they are and have been in the past and what they will be in the future.
So is there room in the club for them right at this moment? Given what you've just said, that as I started it off, your demand for an excellent standard, this is far below that.
Well, there's certain limitations on penalties, and the AFL have actually got involved in this and probably usurped what the club, wished to impose and limit to.
Do you think it could have would have the club imposed something a bit tougher than the AFL?
Theoretical, but as you've heard John say, and I share that, it's a disappointment. We had some momentum, with the way we finished the year, both on-field and off-field, and for those players to make the decision that they did was incredibly disappointing.
And Rob, what does that mean then for Brad especially? He's out of contract now. I mean, where does he stand with the club now? And how do you see things progressing in the next
Oh, look,
weeks?
those discussions are still ongoing. They're ongoing for every club with, probably a third of every club's playing list, and they're getting played out as we speak with his management and with him and our list management group. So probably premature to say anything further on that.
But is it even less likely now that Crouch will be here next year?
Oh, look, I can't say whether that's the case right here, right now. We'll get an update from list management, I think, later in the week.
Would you like to see him at the club next year?
Look, these guys know they've made a mistake. It's impacted the whole football club. They're incredibly remorseful. They know the consequences of this. And at the same time, we talk about mental health. I do want to make sure that they get the support that we deem necessary, that we would like to provide to them. So, look, I don't think we need to comment too much further on those. Today's about, we've just appointed our 5th chairman to the football club. As a club, we're just so thankful for him accepting the role. I know he's going to have an impact. He had the benefit of sitting in on the last board meeting that we held a few weeks ago. He's getting up to speed with everything. I know he has the gravitas, the experience, the contacts that you mentioned, the wisdom and skills to do a fine job for this football club. For however long. We're not ageist and we're not going to put a time limit on this, and the board are 100% supportive of this appointment, as I know our members and supporters will.
Just on that, Rob, how did the board actually come to this decision? Can you just walk us through
Good
the
question.
process?
Yeah, so long process. I flagged probably a year ago that this year would be my last. I've been chairman for 12 years, which is long by anybody's measure. We created a long list of people probably 6 months ago that was created by a subcommittee of the board led by Jim Hazel, our deputy chairman. That list was fulsome. It contained the names of people that had publicly put up their hands, contained names of people that we considered had the experience and skill set, time, thick-skinnedness, gravitas to do the job. And then we just went to there. We probably asked several people, if it was to pass, would they be interested in the role? A small handful said yes, and John's name, bobbed to the top of that list pretty quickly. And we entered into detailed discussions with him more than several weeks ago, over a couple of months ago, and we've got to this stage. And as I said, as each day passes, as I know we're going to stand here as we have today, I've just become increasingly confident and that John is the person to lead our football club, and I'm grateful that he said yes.
Rob, just on that point, where do you think the Crows will finish next year?
I, after 12 years as chairman, have got used to that question, usually at the start of each season, and have refrained. But like John said, we need to have ambition. If I talk to the captain of our football club and if I talk to the senior players, younger players of our football club, I know they have ambitions to play the best footy they can and to play finals. That will always be our aspiration. I'm always the optimist, and I wouldn't rule anything out. I would place no cap on the limit for this player. We saw with the last 5 games of football this year, against 2 preliminary finalists in Geelong and Richmond, we took it right up to them and we won 3 of the last 5. It's where we thought we would play out, and pleasing that it did, because it gives a bit of a glimpse of the future of our playing list and a bit of a glimpse of hope for our supporters and members.
So bottom to top, maybe?
Somewhere in that range, Mike.
John, with the club going through this extensive rebuild, do you envisage there'll be any other changes in leadership at this club? Would you back in the current board and CEO to remain in their positions?
Well, I start this process on listening, observing, discussing with all players, the board, the administration, the players, getting feedback from them about the direction of the club. But I want to re-emphasise the point, those discussions to date, I've found a level of enthusiasm, determination in terms of where the club is at and where it is going. It is a positive feel that I get in the discussion. Talking with the captain, Rory Sloane, I mean, there was no doubt about Rory's unbridled enthusiasm about where this club is going over the course of the next 12 months. But it is a club that demands success at the end of the day. The fans want success at the end of the day, and it's incumbent upon all of us, from the chair right through the club, to pursue that outcome. It is a premiership-focused club for our fans.
John, you mentioned that you've been a fan of the club since its inception. Viewing from the outside, what's your take been on the last 3 years and sort of, watching the club sort of come off that sort of grand final appearance to where it finished a few weeks ago?
Well, the club's had a bumpy ride in a number of instances. There's no denying that, and the people I've talked to have acknowledged the bumpy ride. I've had an opportunity to review a number of the reports that the club prepared of their own initiative, and I think that demonstrates a club wanting to look, review and ensure performance is up to the mark and want to strive to be better all the time. That's a sign of a good club and good governance structure.
And you mentioned, as you've said a number of times, you're happy with the sort of the path the club's on, but there are significant hurdles. Can you start outline a couple of the bigger ones that face the club in your view?
Well, the club, COVID, let me just go back to COVID. COVID has impacted on this club as it has all AFL clubs, SANFL clubs, amateur clubs, etc. And some didn't even play competition this year. The club has, as a result of COVID, had to borrow funds to meet cash flow requirements. Now that's no exception from every other AFL club. Importantly though, this club ensured that that funding took place independent of the AFL. So the club has preserved its independence, and that is a very important factor, in my view, having dealt with the AFL on the Adelaide Oval and the licences and a number of other negotiating points over the last 10 or 12 years. Maintain your independence as a club, and to the credit of the board and the administration, they have done that. So the biggest, the important first hurdle is you clear that debt. Clear that debt as soon as you can. Refocus on then getting the fan facility close to the CBD or in the CBD going forward. So they're the couple of priorities as I see coming in, and there's no doubt that as I engage more closely with the administration and the board, I'll get to understand other issues that are a priority. So that priority list might grow, but they are the two that I've observed in the couple of weeks that I've had discussions so far.
You should put some pressure on Justin Reid and the team too. You know, we've got the best hand that we've ever had in our history going into this year's draft. So hold them to account to deliver. This is their grand final coming up. This is very important. This is, the journey we're on. It's the reset. And we're 1 year into it, and this was a big component of it. So,
well, on that rebuild, I noticed we've gone from one of the oldest playing lists in the competition to the youngest playing list in the competition. Now that flip over a 12 or 18 month period, that's not insignificant in terms of where you're going.
And not accidental.
Yeah.
Rob, what are you going to miss about the Pros?
Oh, I am going to miss, the joy and the highs of winning games of football and the raw emotion, both the men and the women. You talk about unbridled joy, go to the girls and watch them win and celebrate. That's what you miss, that's why everybody plays football, that's why everybody gets involved in football. I've been on the journey for 12 years as chairman. It's a long time, and the time is absolutely right now to hand over to John, and I will be out of the way. I'll be there. John and I have been friends for a long time, always there for a phone call, but that's it for me. I'm out of it, and John's now the leader of our football club, and I know we've left him with a good board and a good team and a plan, and we're in the middle of that journey. And as I said before, you can see the green shoots there, and we go into next year with a lot of enthusiasm, as John's already said.
What do you think your major legacy is that you're leaving?
I've tried to really even think about it or avoid it because, it shouldn't be determined by chairman years anyway, Each coach that comes in, you know, sets their own sort of standards and values and their own agenda. And look, much prefer to line up to that. You know, we threw everything at 2017, and we just didn't quite get there on the day, of course, as everyone knows. And you know, we sort of backed the team in for 18 and 19, and then a legacy is actually setting a path for this journey, and it was pretty courageous, and we're on that journey now, and John will steer that ship to see it through to its fruition, and I'm extremely confident it'll end in smiles.
We hear a lot of people in this industry talking about sort of going out on top, I guess. Is it a hard time for you to leave now when probably the club's maybe not where you'd hoped it would be?
Oh, no, you can't be selfish in these things, it's the decisions we made 18 months ago about where we'd be today are playing out. I'm extremely comfortable with that. And being part of it, and I'm going to be the first one, clapping my hands and cheering for our success that I know is for their next year and the years to come. This should set us up for sustainable success. That's why we're going through some of this pain.
And John, obviously you've deep ties with the SNFL. Will the Crows have a side in the competition there next year?
I would hope so. Once again, AFL have some key component of that decision-making plan, as they did this year. But I would hope that the Crows would be back in the sample competition next year.
Is that an undertaking you've already got, Rob?
Nah, look, we just need the players that miss out on AFL selection. They have to play a game. It's been a trauma for all the clubs really, because we've just had players missing out, and you're seeing other players playing for other teams. So this year's been just one out of the box. So next year they're going to be decisions to be made over the next 6 or 8 weeks.
And women's football, where do you see that progressing forward?
Well, the Crows are the club of choice for women playing football, a career path for Sandford into AFL football. And that's one of the things I'd like to do. I mentioned earlier that the Adelaide Football Club was formed of the Sandford clubs. I'd like to build a ongoing and greater connection with the Sandford clubs going forward. So there is an elite pathway for young people, community, amateur, league, and to elite level football, and build the ecosystem, if I can call it that, of South Australia football, a direct path. And that applies to women as it does to men. And certainly there's no doubt that the AFL Women's Crows team is an objective of young Sandford women players.
John, can I just ask one question? Do you hope Port win the premiership?
I hope for South Australia's case, they do.